Wake up, Adam, they are getting close.
Whether you're Caucasian or you're Jamaican, this I know now. World is what you make it, that's why I'm thanking everyone around. Whether you're Caucasian or you're Jamaican, this I know.
All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Putin's General Armageddon arrested after mysteriously vanishing in the Kremlin Purge amid claims he was in on the Wagner coup. Now, first of all, the whole Wagner coup in the first place is being questioned by everybody. I personally think it was absolutely bunk. We don't know who is creating the bunk. We don't know who's sleeping in it. But they say that, of course, that Armageddon was involved in it. It said that Vladimir Putin's General Armageddon has reportedly been arrested amid claims that he was one of the Wagner Group's armed revolt participants. General Sergei Surovikin, renowned for his merciless maneuvers, has known links to Yevgeny Prigozhin, the Wagner mercenary army chief behind Saturday's so-called rebellion. It says U.S. officials said Surovikin had advanced knowledge of the warlord's plans to rebel against the defense minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the Armed Forces, General Valery Gerasimov, over the dismal war in UKR, the New York Times reports. It says that the Moscow Times later reported that sources within the Defense Department had said that Surovikin had been taken into custody. One source had told them apparently he chose the side of Prigozhin during the rebellion, and they grabbed him by the balls. That's not my line. That's, of course, the quote. It says the department has not officially commented with the source, adding that the details are not even being discussed internally. So first of all, there's a lot of that quote is just absolutely absurd. The whole thing is now they're going on the hunt for who rebelled. How big was the actual rebellion? I still have not gotten exact numbers on that. But out of the dozens of thousands of people, the 25, 30,000 or however many he controls, a lot of people were saying that it was actually only a few battalions. If this was a so-called rebellion and they expected all of the military to just drop their weapons and say, oh yeah, we're going to join you, that doesn't make any sense. First of all, everybody cheered him on as a war hero a week before, and through the streets, everybody was cheering him on to go, go, go against UKR. And in fact, if you see all of these people, worshiping and going to his car and saying, oh, you're so amazing, it shows you that just a week before they were totally in the support of this whole UKR situation, and they were in support of them going after us. So this whole thing is totally stinky, and I don't know what the deal with arresting Armageddon is, but I don't think it is the last time we will see him. We're going to talk about this and much, much more on tonight's episode of Marfoogle News. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. If you've never been here before, remember to go over to our website at marfooglenews.com. You will find every single article, tweet, video, picture, document. All you have to do is look for today's thumbnail. When you go over to our website, you will actually see that you have every single article, tweet, video, picture, document there right down below. And then once you reach a yellow bar on our website, you will actually see that you have every single article, tweet, video, picture, document, and a whole lot of overflow. All the stuff that could not fit into today's show will, of course, be down there. So remember to go check that out. And then, of course, let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So, first of all, there's a lot being talked about over the weekend. A lot of people are distracted with silly stuff. Of course, I of course, saw that Mr. Beast tweeted out that he should have been on the sub. A lot of people are bringing up the sub again. What's funny is the submarine, the Titan submarine that it practically imploded, or they say it did, they are now finding the remains of that, and now they are saying that they found the remains of the people. They found chunks of it. In one picture that I saw, it looks like they actually found the front of the actual sub with the window. I don't know, though. They covered it with white wrapping. And it's bringing up the whole Titan sub thing again. It's a lot of what people can talk about. Meanwhile, if they're not talking about the sub, they're actually talking about how Mr. Beast claimed that he was invited to actually go. So you can go over to my Twitter if you want to see what I tweeted. He posted a screenshot of a blue iMessage, which actually Dex told me about first. And it's an iMessage on Apple, which if you have Apple, you know that blue is the messages you send, not somebody else sending it to you. It's gray. So when he posted a screenshot of supposedly this other guy inviting him to go, it looked like he typed it up himself and then took a picture of his own screenshot to himself and then put that out just for clout or something, or to say like, oh, I almost was there. So people are very, tearing him apart, and essentially everybody's talking about that. It isn't a crazy deal, but it also kind of shows you people are clout chasing and trying to bring up the sub and distract people. Dex, that was kind of funny. You saw that. Then a million other people saw it too. Everybody was making fun of him, basically saying, oh, I was supposed to be there. And then he confirms that it wasn't his message, that his friend that works with OceanGate, or that was with OceanGate, or that was going on that trip, essentially invited him to go along, and for some reason sent him that screenshot after he said that he was going, and everybody thought he was full of crap. Dex, did you see that he actually responded?
Yeah, I saw that, and it's convenient. It's a convenient excuse, but it doesn't make a lot of logical sense. I don't, and not only that image that he used was cropped so tightly you can't see anything else. Even if there was other things that you wouldn't want to show, typically when people post a text message as proof, they show the context, or at least the time, or a fuller screenshot of it, and then they may redact out personal information on it if they don't want it seen. But no, This was so tight you couldn't tell.
Yeah. And it even cuts off the bottom of the actual message. So it's just stupid. But of course, people are going to be talking about that rather than digital ID went through with the world, and of course health, and of course that organization, the W and the H and the O. In 80 countries, they have the digital ID system going through. So of course, people should be probably more focused on that. But we're going to talk about a ton right now. And of course, I want to say thank you to the mods, and I hope you do too. Make sure to drop an M in the chat right now for the mods, keeping it peaceful down there. Robert Hoskins, thank you so much for subscribing. Yep, thank you. And Top Shelf, I appreciate your support yesterday. Stanton's Shenanigans, thank you for subscribing, and thank you for becoming a member. Tree Hugger, Miss Lady Tiger, Bork, thank you. Reverend Brian York, thank you for your support yesterday. And Fireflight 11, thank you, and thank you. By the way, Dex, the website is not loading on my end, so it might be my end, but it also might be it's not patching through.
I'll take a look.
All right, and then Japan gives SpaceX's Starlink satellite constellation trial run. The self-defense forces have been using SpaceX's Starlink satellite constellation on a trial basis since March, according to the Japanese government sources. The move aims to enhance the SDF's communication capabilities amid actions by China and Russia to strengthen their abilities to attack satellites. It says there is a view towards fully making use of the high-speed communication service provided by the private U.S. space development company from next fiscal year. How SDF communication satellites, this and that. This actually shows a graph. It says Starlink in orbit at about 550 kilometers. This would communicate down below, and then they would actually be able to use that to knock out satellites out of the sky. It says that the SDF is also, which, by the way, I think eventually they're going to change the name of the SDF. That's Self-Defense Forces. If you didn't know, Japan has changed their constitution after last year. They're doing all of the process to actually turn into an offensive military. The reason they call themselves the Self-Defense Forces is because they would never get involved unless they were directly attacked. That's why they literally called it the Self-Defense Forces, and it's part of a deal that they did after World War II. It's a big thing. But now they have switched that around to now have one of the top military budgets in the world. I believe it's in the top 5, but at the very least, it is in the top 10. It says the SDF is also making arrangements to use U.S. military satellites and those of other nations. The Starlink satellite constellation links a large number of small satellites in low orbit, about 550 kilometers above Earth. After communications in UKR were disrupted following Russia's invasion of its neighbor, UKR forces used Starlink to gain access to the internet. This allowed UKR to launch counteroffensives against Russia. Japan's defense ministry signed a contract with an agent that provides SpaceX's service to equip units of the air, ground, and maritime SDF with Starlink antennas and other communication devices. The SDF has been using the service for at about 10 locations, including bases and camps, to verify whether there are any operational issues. So this is a big in the way that it's surprising that they actually haven't had this before. Dex, were you surprised that they really haven't had a lot of capabilities that most countries do because they have focused only on self-defense?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we're watching them grow into a much bigger military now, or at least start to take these steps. But the fact that they've been testing Starlink for many months now is interesting. Obviously, they have their own satellites, but then they're in consideration now for expanding at what looks like, according to that diagram, vessel-to-vessel communications using United States satellites. So definitely an expansion, much more than what we've seen from them in the past.
Now, as far as somebody said, when will it be free? Andros Okia, if you're talking about Starlink, I don't know if that will ever be free. I think I only know one person that actually has Starlink. Maybe I know two. The one I'm thinking of is Ilea in one of our mods has it, and from what I heard at first, that it was pretty awesome. I don't know if I don't think I know anybody else with one. But in the very beginning, you had to put a huge deposit down, and it was $600 or something for the actual equipment, and then it was pretty cheap. It was like $100 a month or something. But it does have a lot of uses. But is it going to be better than anything else, or is it worth what they're doing? They're literally putting a grid around the planet. If that's true, I mean, it's already messed up a whole lot of stargazing. What will it be like when they get into full operation with a full grid around our world? Go ahead, Dex.
Well, and let's keep in mind, like, the first big military use of this was in UKR, and we've seen a lot, at least a lot of threats towards Starlink from Vlad and others because of its effectiveness. So it's shaping up to be much more than just a consumer platform. Especially if the militaries are getting in line to start using it. So it's proving the point that this capability is valuable for them.
And here's a big point to keep in mind. Why are they doing it now? Why are they doing it in the first place? You see a lot of countries right now making sure that they have communications if something big goes down. It says that China and Russia possess ground-based jammers that they reportedly have used on other countries' satellites. In the event of a contingency, SDF units might face paralyzing situations if communication satellites are attacked and become malfunctioning. Now, their whole reason that they're changing around their constitution and they're doing all of this is because they say out loud that they're worried about China not only taking Taiwan, but then going after them. They have said it publicly. They believe that China actually wants Japan by the end of the day. Many say, oh, well, no, they just want Taiwan. They wanted Hong Kong, and then they're happy with that. Japan does not think so. If they do run Japan, if they actually have, there's a lot of simulations showing that if they take Guam, Hawaii, and Japan, just those three places, they're three really important places, they would essentially run a part of the world. And if they had that, they would basically be able to run all sorts of shipping and different things that go on. They would be able to control a lot of trade, and which would put them, which in the simulations show them moving into number one spot. That combined with BRICS and the SCO and this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is now growing, they would be able, and the Belt and Road Initiative, where they're basically having all of these countries in debt to them. There's all of these different ways that China is trying to take the number one spot, or at least that's what people say. On the other side of the argument, people say that the U.S. is encroaching on China and that they are actually in a defensive mode. Same thing with Russia. There's two sides to every coin. But at the same time, both sides on the China-U.S. fight, if people believe the other way around, that the U.S. has all these bases encroaching in on China, that side as well believes that it's about to go to war because they believe that China's not going to take it for much longer. So either way, you're looking at some sort of battle with China. We have covered things over the last couple of weeks that showed that China, that the U.S. is actually essentially putting through, and we even had a caller that somewhat confirmed that they are going to quicken the speed that we make and manufacture semiconductor chips here. That says something to me that essentially they're planning for China to take Taiwan and to take the main TSMC factory. I don't think they're going to blow it up, and I don't think if they don't go to war with China, then they're going to let them have it. A lot of folks think it's more likely that they'll let them have Taiwan if they do get forceful than actually stand up for it. And especially after Blinken said, we support one China. Well, if we do, that means China will run the semiconductor chips, area, and we'll be in a lot of trouble, or we'll be in a lot of debt to China, or we'll be dependent on China for a lot of things. We're already dependent on all sorts of crazy things like antibiotics, APIs, and of course, lithium and other products. Let's see here. Comet Moon, WIS Jen, Rob Max, Keith Simmons. What's going on? Hey, so people are doing a roll call. It looks like we have Keith Simmons from Iowa. Nice to see you. Cactus Jane says bullies. Let's see here. Steven Story. Hello, Marfam. Hey, Patrick Belmar. Thank you. The V2. Let's see here. Technical Game Aggregate 4 was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. I did not know that. The V2. I feel like I've used the V2 in like Command and Conquer or something. And then we have, do you all think the submarine stuff has been a distraction? Stanton's shenanigans. I mean, I think it happened, but I think it's being used as a distraction. I mean, why did they wait 4 days to come out? There's a lot of people that have pointed out that it has taken way more attention than other things. There's a viral video going around right now that shows Obama saying that even Obama noticed is the caption on the video that's going viral. And Obama said at a speech recently, he said, I think it's very interesting that we focused on this sub with 5 people in it. Meanwhile, in that same time period, there was a ship with, I think, 700 immigrants or something like that sank. And nobody really talked about it. At the same point, there's been subs with 5, 10, 15, 20 people that have sank in the past, and they did not get the coverage that this did. That last sub came at a time when there was multiple things going on. There were multiple big stories that came out, and nobody really paid attention because all that people could talk about was the Titanic, was the sub, and everything else. And because it was so obviously shady, the second it happened, within like 6 hours of them doing the whole story, they had all of these things wrong. You had like 5 news companies come out and say, oh, just 6 months ago, this looked really shady, and they made fun of how shady this thing looked. You had people jumping out of the woodworks saying how shady it was, and it just seemed like it was purposely made to look shady, so everybody questioned it. I think there's a lot of stories like right now that, you know, the pipeline and all of these other stories that are so questionable. It's like, if this was manufactured, why are they doing it so obviously? It seems purposeful. I think they're doing 4D chess. They, of course, they know what the response is going to be, and then they war game or simulate out what the response to the response will be, and they're actually trying to get your response. They're trying to get a certain response, and they're trying to get a certain feeling or result out of it. So even if you're angry about something because you think that they're lying about something, it's like they probably simulated that out, and they knew you were going to be mad, and they knew you would think that it was going to be a lie and that it was fake and this and that. If you didn't know, I mean, like, the Navy heard the sound. They lied. At first they said that they didn't contact anybody for 8 hours. Then the Navy came out days later and they said that at the very time it imploded, right after they lost contact, that the Navy was tracking it. So there's multiple stories that made it just look shady right off the bat. Is it being used as a distraction? Media uses things like that as a distraction all the time. The saying, don't ever let a good crisis go to waste, or a good disaster go to waste. That's what they do. They want views. They want clicks. They want all they can get. Meanwhile, the really, really juicy and good stories, if the stories are about a industry or a company or a group that essentially has a whole lot of money invested in those same news companies, they're probably not going to cover it. If your biggest ad, sponsor is a company like a medical company or a pharma company, you're probably not going to badmouth them, especially when they're paying for half of your advertising, right? So it's an easy explanation for those who are new to this niche of why they don't talk about it. And it's a very obvious one, too. Shady is an understatement, says Easy Pass. Yeah, I broke my toes, startled mouse. OkiCon, they want to support an agenda. Well, by now it's crazy how many people talk about the ESG and all of that crazy stuff. I think it should be clear that they don't care about the actual causes. They just care about the ratings in so many different ways. Not just viewing ratings, but ratings about how open they are, or whatever it's called. And then rotting animal smell permeated the air in northwest Indiana over the weekend. So Dex, this is really weird. I didn't smell this. They said over the northwest, but it was more kind of a state over. But everybody said that it smelled like death. I didn't smell this. Did any of you guys smell this over the last couple days? Dex, go ahead.
Yeah, this was in northern Indiana, below Lake Michigan area, and apparently everyone was just getting this horrifically smelling, like a rotting animal, as they described it. It was so bad they were getting hundreds of calls to emergency services over and over again. People couldn't understand what was happening. Some said it was like rotten eggs. Others then said, hey, well, maybe that's the smell from a gas leak or something like that. But it turns out the only thing we know at this time is that they were able to track it down to a BP refinery. And that they then later came out and said that they had a weather-related incident. But this is strange when you think about it. So how does a refinery have a storm come through and it said they had to off gas, but they didn't say what. They didn't say what was released. They didn't warn the public. They didn't tell anybody afterwards. Only until somebody asked, "Hey, we figured out it was you. What did you do?" They just said, "We had a storm issue." But yeah, this was so bad that it went all the way across the whole northern state. It might have even went into the states neighboring it, to the east. But a lot of people were smelling this, and they just couldn't understand. Now, I don't confuse this with what everybody's smelling now, which is the fire and the smoke from Canada, because that's now coming down into Chicago and other areas like that, in that area, and probably affecting a lot more people across the northern portion of the U.S. But this was a really interesting one because we don't know what it was, and they have yet to say what it was. And a lot of people are questioning, like, if this happened just because we had a storm roll through, is this going to happen, more often? Like, what are they pushing into the air?
Yeah, it just doesn't. A lot of these things don't really make sense. It's like, what do you guys think that was? Did any of you smell it? That smell by Leonard Skinnard. Let's see. Hi there from Dallas. What is going on? Hey, we've got a lot of folks from all over the place. Hey, thank you. Let's see. I smelled dead animal in my yard like a dead hedgehog. Iceni. I-C-E-N-I. I think that's how you say it. Patrick Belmar, 2 Thessalonians. Sometimes Greeley. I don't know. Don't know how you almost got me to say that. Dead animal and sulfur are 2 different smells. Yeah, Old Believer making a great point. Yeah, sulfur does not smell like dead animal. Dead animal smells like rotting flesh. Period. Now, I also wanted to point out, let's see here. I wanted to make sure I pointed out, I didn't get this in, but I actually commented on this. So I don't know the full story on this, but I will point it out since Stephen McMahon brought it up. And I believe I saw it on Derek's, on his Twitter. So let me see if I can find it. I don't know, though. I thought it was more recent than this. Over the last couple days, basically said that Vlad had planes moving people in and out. Yeah. So this was the 27th. So this was yesterday and into last night. There were flight radar tracking. This is over on Derek Bro's Twitter, but it was actually taken from Crease.19. And basically they were tracking Russian planes and going from all over the place. And what the theory is, and this is just the theory, is that they were going and picking up diplomats from different places. So they were taking out. So again, it says this is why all flights have been canceled, not because of weather.
On June 27th.
And it actually shows the Russian Special Flight Squadron plane leaving, and there were several things there. So I don't know what the true story is with that, but again, this is something that we let you know about. You can go check it out. In fact, Dex, I forgot to send you this link. But if you can get this link, and I'll pull it up on my phone and send it to you by the end of the show if you can't find it. But if this is true at all, that they have Russian planes picking people up out of countries, why would they do that? Let me ask you guys, our community, why do you think that they would do that? And do you think that this is something that's true? Is this a sign of something worse to come? I don't really know. I really didn't know until late last night about this, and I was late to it. So if you guys know, let me know what you think, and let me know in the comments below. If you've been following it, then let me know. I'm sure folks like Monkeyworks and other channels are following all of the flight radar stuff, so you can also go over and check out their channels if you would like. Let's see here.
And we have it on our website now, Adam.
Okay, perfect. So if you want to go check it out, that tweet is over there. Somebody says, incoming, dreaded seeker. Maybe it's the factory making Elon Musk's burnt hair novelty cologne. Quite the fragrance. Ryan Alter, you got to... that reminds me of the whole Jacob Israel thing. I was texting him as Elon was tweeting, and he was tweeting things that were directly related to Jacob's show. Everybody, including my own mod, said, no, I think it's just a coincidence. And they were pointing out, like, I don't think so. But I saw things that I was like, wait a second. And then the Three Musketeers thing he tweeted that looked like the symbol that Jacob showed. And he talked about the Three Musketeers being that it was Trump, Kanye, and Elon Musk. And then he tweeted the picture. And then an hour later, exactly, deleted it. It was so weird. It's just weird. Basically implying that Elon might be watching this niche. I believe that he could very well be watching it. It's not because we all have big heads or anything. There's actually a pretty small group. As you guys know, everybody in this niche knows everybody. And if you're into this kind of thing, if you are into anything, end times or theory or any of that, there's only a few real channels that people really go to. Even when I started watching this stuff and watching content about, truth-related stuff, there were only about 4 or 5 people that I used to watch, most of which aren't even around anymore, or they got knocked off, or they're still around and they've moved to other platforms. But I remember it was like I jumped from like 4 or 5 channels that were my go-to. I'm very, very, very thankful that we are the go-to for a lot of people, and I appreciate you guys. Let's see here. Elon's new song is Fingernails on Chalkboard. I believe his name is Fingernails on Chalkboard to a lot of people. It was his birthday today or yesterday. A lot of people were wishing him happy birthday. Honestly, I think it's going to be funny if he actually does fight Zuckerberg, but it'll just be another big distraction.
Did you hear about his dad?
No, what happened?
His dad, I know you already tweeted about his mom. His dad came out and said he wasn't in favor of it either. And he says he's not going, that no matter what happens, he's going to lose. Because if he wins, everybody's going to call him a bully. And if he loses, it's going to look really bad on him to lose. So he's like, this is a no-win situation. He doesn't understand why his son got into this situation. He's acting like a high schooler.
Personally, I think that's going to grab headlines all over the world. People already like it, whether they're hating on him or praising Elon. The media goes nuts with Elon. I would say he doesn't do movies or any of that, but he is the biggest celebrity in the world because of how much money he makes and the projects that he does. I mean, you have to admit, even if you hate the guy, he's doing space travel to Mars, supposedly. He's doing a chip that can link humans to computers. He's digging giant, mysterious holes in the ground, and he produces one of the hottest, most wanted cars out there. He's got so many different areas, and he helped found PayPal and all that stuff. The guy is up there with any celebrity that's known worldwide. In every different language, there's videos about him, whether they're hating on him or loving him. Either way, that's why a lot of people are just commenting. They think he's the Antichrist, right? Because everybody loves him. But I don't know. I think the Antichrist would be somebody that everybody across the board loves. Not everybody loves him right now, but that's because he went against the so-called narrative. But is that on purpose? Did he do that so people would trust him and then break that trust? A lot of people still, the jury is out for a lot of us. And then President JB has begun using a CPAP machine for sleep apnea. Now, this doesn't seem like a big thing, but there's a bigger kind of purpose for why this is a concerning thing. At least that's what people are saying. First of all, there were indents on his face that everybody was like, what the heck? Essentially, the White House and the government is not exactly being upfront about all of JB's health problems. And this is a big deal, and it has been a big deal in the past with candidates and with actual presidents, because if the president isn't healthy or even shows that he may be weak, obviously we've seen this with even Vladimir Putin. They say he has cancer and that he's weak. It's a big thing that if a president looks weak or looks physically ill or might not be all there, because if they're running one of the most powerful, now the most powerful country in the world, then it's a big deal if they're not all there. If they're not mentally there, if they're not physically there, if they die tomorrow, that could cause a crisis. So there's a big thing here. Now, they're saying that President JB has recently begun using a CPAP machine to treat sleep apnea. Now, I think that's weird. My one of my daughters had this going from 12 years old. If you have sleep apnea, it's something that you always have. It's something that comes on pretty early. It's usually, from all the cases I know, which I know 3 people that use a CPAP, or four cases. A lot of bodybuilders use CPAPs because when they build up their neck, it actually, all of that weight crushes down on their trachea. It's actually one of the biggest reasons that bodybuilders die is they die in their sleep, because when they're laying down, all of your muscles go relaxed and all of that weight on their neck actually closes their windpipe. So I have a friend that is a bodybuilder, big buff guy, and he has to use CPAP. I doubt that that's why Mr. JB is doing it. Or they have a weird shaped throat, or they have a weird nasal thing. Either way, when you have sleep apnea, you can actually slowly kill yourself because essentially you are not breathing. If oxygen isn't going to your brain when you're asleep, it can be really, 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 really harmful. Now, as far as the sleep apnea thing, most people go, who cares? Well, I guess it's because more and more they're seeing all of these problems that they're not being upfront about. Dex, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment. I actually have it myself, and I use a CPAP machine, so I'm well aware of it. And for him to show up with these strap marks on his face out of the blue, all of a sudden one day, and that's what everybody reacted to. It was like, hey, we didn't know this. Like, you always disclose a lot of the medical information, but you didn't disclose this. But the other interesting thing is this is coming out from CNN. Well, it's coming out from everybody, but this is even CNN doing it. So why all of a sudden is the attack against the health of the current president at play? And it's not just this story; it's going to be a few other things that they're talking about. But yeah, that if for those of you who don't have sleep apnea, you basically lose oxygenation while you're sleeping because you're not getting enough air, and it causes you to be extremely tired. It puts a lot of strain on your heart. So it's night and day difference if you have it and you use a machine or don't use a machine. The next day you can tell.
It's actually why we recommend the solar generator for anybody that has a CPAP, because if your CPAP and its backup battery go, I mean, if you have sleep apnea bad enough, that's like a life and death thing. Not everybody has the worst sleep apnea where they're going to, but it can get really, really bad. You can perish in your sleep. With a generator, you can at least have some sort of backup. Go ahead, Dex.
I was going to say, what if this was one of the doubles and he just screwed up and didn't realize that he had the imprints on his face from his mask? But
well,
I mean, there's all sorts of weird stuff that can go on. People are going to think about this, like what else could be, on his face besides a mask. And by the way, if it was really an issue and you didn't want the strap marks, you could use a nose. They make a nose one that goes in your nose. It just sort of expands your nostrils, and you don't have to have the strap lines on your face. But anyway, there's going to be a lot of people questioning this one.
Louis Trampoche says, and I don't know, I've said your name probably wrong 50 times. Louis Trampoche says it's the Bane mask. So he's wearing a Bane. He was wearing the Bane mask. He's moonlighting as a Batman villain. Oh, no, I'm sorry to hear that. Justin Jerea, BCM, says, my dad perished from sleep apnea. No, it's really, really bad. My eldest daughter has it, and when she was getting, we found out when she was getting tooth surgery, and what happened is they put her under, and her throat started closing up, and it was really, really scary. They had to emergency wake her up. Because she wasn't breathing and her throat started closing. It's a very, very scary thing. So now every surgery or like wisdom teeth removal or anything like that, she now has to be awake. It's a scary thing. And then CPAP machines, yeah, there's good ones and there's bad ones. If you have some of the cheaper ones, they're pretty loud, but most are pretty quiet. And then President JB has confused Iraq with Ukraine twice in the last 24 hours. This is yet another kind of fluff up. And I would think like a couple of years ago when he started making gaffes, all presidents make gaffes. Most notably, I think the ones that were really pointed out and when media really, really, really pointed out them a lot is back with George W. Bush. Almost every stupid thing that guy said was publicized, was covered in the media. And remember, when that was all going on, that was kind of the beginning or the early stages of, internet, where everybody had the internet. And a lot of that changed how media was, how things were covered even. And rumor and, rumor mills and all that kind of stuff. Not so much with Obama. I don't remember too many things talking about all of his gaffes. He was very well spoken. That's one thing most people would say. But with Trump, they did say that a lot. Every little mistake or covfefe, whatever. But with President JB, I noticed that a lot of people stood up for him that were supporters. They supported him. Okay. And they would say, well, everybody does that. He has done it to the point where he has offended whole countries. He's actually offended multiple countries over the last year and a half with different statements, actually confusing two different places. So Dex, how was the context where he flipped these two around?
I think on Tuesday night he was speaking and he said basically that he was admiring how they brought all of Europe together in the onslaught against Iraq, and which should have been UKR. And then he talked about NATO, them, and then this more recent one that was today. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I think it's in here. It's he said it's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the conflict in Iraq, referring to UKR, referring to Putin, and calling it that war. But what's also interesting though is he wasn't even VP or obviously wasn't president at that time, but he wasn't even VP at that time. So this was the Bush eras for that. I don't know why this is becoming the it's not. You would sort of think, okay, maybe it was a slip. Happens once, but twice within 24 hours. It's kind of interesting.
I don't, and I try to be as unbiased, and I'm biased. Everybody's biased. You can't be unbiased and cover stuff. You have opinions. I have opinions. People are going to hate me, but I defend him for this because when I am reading, and this is why I think he's reading too, is because when I see Ukraine, my brain sometimes thinks Iraq. I think I almost did it earlier in the show. So I will say this. I have looked at the word UKR and I've thought Iraq. So that kind of almost backs it up. And I think maybe a lot of people when they read it, especially if they read a lot of news and they see news about that country and news about this country, I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's got a K in it and a Q and your brain thinks of the sounds when you're reading it. But I have done that. So, but that's also probably because he's reading a teleprompter. So there's my little bias jab there. It's hard to tell, JB said, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq. He's losing the war at home, and he's become a bit of pariah around the world. So again, twice in 24 hours. If anybody told you, my staff wasn't sure either that we'd be able to bring all of Europe together in the onslaught on Iraq and get NATO to be completely united, I think that they would have told you it's not likely. So those were the two times in 24 hours that he flubbed it up. You would think after the first one they would have drilled it in, but again, who knows? Be Real Beast, thank you for the support and thank you. Account is back. God bless. Please don't ever apologize for taking care of yourself and your family. Well, thank you, Be Real. And again, I think. Oh, I'm assuming. I actually did. I helped family members, and that was actually quite a project. I don't know if you guys saw my Twitter, but I posted some of the old stuff I found. I was helping clear out a house, and it was really cool. I found an old record stack, and in the records, I found a Jafco mailer from 1986. It was actually from Father's Day, a Father's Day sale, and I don't even remember Jafco. I don't think it was around when I was maybe when I was a kid, but it was a store that kind of had everything, kind of like a Sears catalog. And it showed all the prices. And one thing that I found really interesting, and this is something to say kind of around what we cover, is around 1979, 1980 is when China opened its doors to capitalism. Before that, if you bought dishware, if you bought a radio, if you bought this, if you bought that, most of it was made in America. Or at least a ton of it was, right? Or if it was in Japan or this or that. But a lot of it was made in America, especially the dishware and certain things and toys and this and that. And I noticed that the prices in this sale for 1986, this is over almost 40 years ago, the prices were actually, in some cases, more than what we would pay now. And if you think about it, say you go get a set of dishes for $50, what they gave you in 1986 was like 4 plates, 4 cups, basically a set of 4, right? but it was like real porcelain. It was an actual dish set. Now you can go get that for $20 or $15. It's actually cheaper now, even with all of the inflation and how much money was worth back then compared to now. You can get it for $20 or $15, but that's because it's made in China. Most of the things that we get cheap. And I saw all these prices and I'm like, actually, that's more expensive than it is today, or it is about the same price. And I'm thinking, how does the money change this much in 40 years and the prices were still the same? Right now, even, that would be like a dish set was, 4 or 5 hours at work at minimum wage, right? It didn't make sense, but then I thought it's 86, so there was still a lot of stuff that was made in the United States. Is that right? I mean, Dex, do you think that would be a correct estimate of why stuff was around the same price?
That could be. I mean, imagine if that stuff was made in America today, it would be a fortune.
Yeah, I would think that it would. Yeah, I mean, we see the stuff that's made in America. If you get a dish set like that, it's $200, $300 for almost nothing. American-made lamps. I went to get a light bulb at a lamp store. They had lamps that were like $400 or $500 made in Detroit, and I was like, gosh, how do people pay that much for a lamp? But that's what you pay if you don't support the CCP. Top Shelf LLC, thank you. And then Robert Hoskins, thank you. Nissan Tech 23 says, so much happening, it's all a distraction from the pushing policies and releasing millions of GMO mosquitoes in Florida with cases of malaria common. As far as I believe we actually covered a lot of that last week and the crazy mosquito stuff that's going on and that's going to be going on. Before we talk about AUKUS, first cohort of Australian submarines graduate United States Navy's nuke school, I want to remind you guys, make sure to go over and check out marfooglenews.com/Inergy. These are solar generators made by one of the best companies out there. Again, the Flex 1500 is their flagship system. It's expandable up to 96 batteries. It's modular, so you can actually change the way it works. You can actually improve on it. You can build it as you go and add different features like UPS. You can actually add supercharging. You can do all sorts of great stuff with this. Essentially, you get power from the sun. So you will put solar panels out in your yard or in your window, and you will get power for free. In fact, you have unlimited power as long as the sun comes up. As far as you can also charge this as a battery bank, you can charge it via the wall. In that way, it is, again, really great because you have on-demand power. Now, Inergy is, again, we talked about the Flex Tactical. That is their new one that was designed with the Air Force Research Laboratory. Now they have yet another bragging right, and this is why this is going to quickly become one of the best out there. This is actually the kind of list of all of the things they've gone through since 2019 or 2016. They won the Defense Innovation Award. Now they've been awarded all sorts of awards, and now they are notified of being selected of the 2023 U.S. Army X-Tech phase contract. So essentially, when they say military strong, this thing is going to be soon have massive contracts, and it looks like the Army is eyeing to use these actually in action. So if you want one of the best out there, I would highly recommend going for the Flex Tactical or the Flex 1500. But they also have kind of their main one, the X2, so make sure to go check that out as well. That's an all built in. But if you want one of the best solar generators out there, the most reliable, go over to marfooglenews.com/Inergy, Inergy, and make sure to use the code Marfoogle. You'll get a huge discount, and you'll be helping our channel at the same time. And you're going to have backup for any time your power goes out. You'll end up having a way to power your CPAP or power your lamps, your lights, your TVs, your fridges. So again, this is a really good thing to have, especially if your power goes out a lot. Mine does, and these have come in handy so many times, it's not even funny. Again, make sure to go check it out, marfooglenews.com/Inergy, Inergy, and make sure to use the code Marfoogle, Marfoogle. All right, Dex, do you want to cover the AUKUS?
So as we have discussed at many times about this whole acquisition of nuclear subs from the U.S. to Australia, part of that is to get their Navy trained. And apparently, the first submariners from Australia have now officially graduated the U.S. Navy's nuke school, as they call it. So this has it's they don't have the subs yet. That's coming, but to get prepared in advance of that, they had to have staff and military personnel, Navy personnel specifically, trained to be able to operate and work on these subs. So they've been going through this process. So obviously things are moving at a very fast pace. And I think that's what's most important here is to think about how we just talked about last year, the deal. Now we've already got students that have graduated. Presumably they'll be going on and continuing to do training and probably simulations and other things while they're waiting for these subs to be delivered. But the speed at which this is all happening, I think, is what's most important to think about, because and also, as we mentioned before, this was kind of a slap in the face to France, because France was supposed to be delivering some subs to Australia, but Australia canceled that deal in turn for buying the more the faster delivered, better powered, more well equipped U.S. subs that we offered them. So the fact that this is moving at a fast pace, I think, is indicative of what we're expecting to see happen in the Pacific. Obviously, arming Australia with U.S. nuclear subs is for defense and or offense against anything that would happen in that region, and that specifically being, eyeballs looking at Xi and China. So that's what you need to pay attention to. Obviously, the subs aren't there today, but they will be in the not too distant future.
Yeah, we're talking about all of that, the whole thing with France, when they ended up, Australia said that they wanted nuclear subs. There was the deal, they had a deal with France that was going to take some crazy amount of years, like 15 years or 14 years to finish the contract. And then the U.S. kind of went in underneath that and said, hey, we can get them to you in about 2 years or 2 or 3 years. And that pissed France off. It's part of the reason, and it was actually just mentioned recently when after Xi visited Macron, within a day or two said, oh, yeah, actually, we're going to be distancing ourselves from the U.S. It's like stories like that. It's so obvious. It's like after Xi visits, Macron makes a statement that he's going to distance himself from the U.S. It's meant for everyone in the world to go, oh, that's kind of weird. It's like you don't know that they know that that's going to look weird, that after Xi visits, you say you're going to distance yourself, and they're one of our allies, supposedly. I think there's going to be a lot of flip-flops, or there's a lot of people in every government that are on both sides and playing both sides, two-faced. And then the U.S. Marines have totally transformed for the coming missile war against China. It says today's U.S. Marine Corps isn't your father's Marine Corps. That much for sure. It's not even the same Marine Corps as 5 years ago. Yeah, it's not. Unnoticed by many, the world's biggest naval infantry branch has embarked on a decade-long transformation from America's Second Army to a true island-hopping amphibious force. Now, this we have actually pointed out since we have shown you all of the contracts that went out. We covered all of the crazy, weird orders that the U.S. Army made, including the amphibious assault ships. These are amphibious assault carriers. I don't know if they call them AACs, but they're essentially APCs that are amphibious, right? They can carry personnel from island to island. They can drive right into the water. There was a giant, and I mean giant, order that actually was awarded. The contract was awarded to a local company up here in the Northwest. And when we talked about that, this is before a lot of the rumors of the war with China. It was only just an inkling of rumor. That's back when we covered this. And I said, this is obviously because they're planning some sort of conflict. That was before much of the talk about Taiwan. I don't even think when I first started the show, almost anybody was talking about the whole Taiwan thing. In fact, that was when I started the show, that was before Hong Kong got reabsorbed. So this is like, you could see what they were doing before they were doing it. This is why people believe that this stuff has all been planned for decades. Instead of essentially duplicating those things the much bigger U.S. Army already does, the new Marine Corps is focusing on the things only that it can do well among the American armed services, namely set up island outposts in dangerous territory and fire long-range weapons at enemy ships or shore targets, then pack up and sail or fly away before the enemy can shoot back. Ignore the critics, who include towering figures such as retired Marine General Anthony Zinni. The old general has lambasted the new Corps as glorified fires delivery systems. That is, an organization that only purpose is to fire long-range missiles. Zinni's critique is unfair. The Corps' transformation is good and necessary one at a time when the biggest military threat to a liberal world order is the Chinese Navy, now the world's biggest by number of warships, though not yet by tonnage and firepower. Once the Marines Force Design 2030 reorganization is complete, they will be a powerful air-sea-land force with primarily maritime mission, a force that should cause Chinese fleet leaders to think twice when they deploy warships towards the first island chain threading from Japan south to the Philippines. Dex, when they talk about this, it's almost as if they're more talking about Japan and other places. It's like they've kind of already said, bye to Taiwan. It seems like they know about a goal to go way past Taiwan. Like they're really talking about Japan. I mean, it would make sense that they would know some sort of information behind the scenes, since Japan has done all of this changing of their constitution, and they're going to be an offensive force now, and all of this. Doesn't it kind of point that out?
On one hand it does, but on the other hand, those are the only places we would have access. Like, it's not like we can go do this on islands in Taiwan for practice. So we would only be able to set this up on our allies' territories where they allow us. But nonetheless, this is definitely an interesting perspective on how the Marine Corps has shifted, at least in the Pacific, and what they're doing, and the tactics that they're training for, which is obvious. Again, just like we talked about in the article before about why are we trying to get nuclear subs to Australia? Why are we trying to get our Marines, amped up and ready to roll on island hopping and missile games where they're able to launch and then relocate quickly so they don't get hit? Because we're expecting this to happen. We're expecting something to come from China.
Yeah, why would they make such a big fundamental change unless they're expecting that probability to play out? Why would they spend so much money on very specific contracts to turn the entire army into a different thing? I thought it was interesting that it is called the Force Design 2030 reorganization, because definitely all of our military branches have been going through great changes, like menopause, only minus the men. And then Chinese ambassador unexpectedly supports Ukraine's desire to liberate Crimea. Dex, do you want to go over this one?
So this is kind of strange. It's almost in the camp of Blinken and Biden, in the fact that they were on two different ends of the spectrum. So here we have the one of the ambassadors, a Chinese ambassador to the European Union, and they were specifically asking about the way the territories were laid out pre Crimea being taken over. And he basically agreed and said, yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. I could see them wanting to have that. We're in favor of nations and their territories, and the ones that they had. We don't think that should be shifted and changed. So basically he was saying, yeah, we agree. UKR should take back Crimea, and they would support that. Now, I don't know if that's Xi's opinion. I don't know how that really folds up with the No Limits partnership, and how they would align that with Russia's obvious position, which is to keep Crimea, as was the other territories they've since claimed since the invasion that started last year. But kind of an interesting statement that has come out from this ambassador, and we'll have to see what really, if anything, even comes. I don't even know if they'll respond to it and make a correction. But it's just interesting when you see this, because it is like, so really, did he say that?
Yeah, doesn't fly. And then Russia's latest, Biden Scholz say Putin weakened by failed mutiny. My personal thought on all of this whole he looks weak thing, there is some sort of propaganda going on here. There is some sort of narrative that they want to push, and there's also a way that they want us to feel and want us to think about it. It is so obvious that they're trying to make this happen, but what's weird about this whole thing is this has really put it into perspective for a lot of us who don't think that they are high-fiving behind closed doors. Why did it seems like that they're all in on this, right? We all think, most of us think of Putin as somebody who wouldn't want to be embarrassed, one of these alpha male guys who, spilled something on his shirt. He would fight you right there, then and there, or some guy who, if they called him chicken, he wouldn't be the one to walk away and go, you know what, I'm going to be the bigger guy and just kind of, don't worry about it. Or if somebody called him chicken, he's not going to back down. Now you call me a chicken, he's going to prove himself. Why would he sit there and be horribly embarrassed by this? I mean, this is embarrassing. Unless it was on purpose, unless it was by his doing, it does not make sense. You must think that he cares about all of these different medias all around the world, making him look like an idiot, right? It doesn't sit right. And he did it himself because the rebellion doesn't seem legit. The rebellion, there's so many holes in this story. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Do you know what I'm saying, Dex? Like, it doesn't make sense that the whole rebellion doesn't. It unless it is what they say it is, and it really didn't go that well to where it was only a couple hours, and somebody called, oh, hey, buddy, we've been friends for 20 years. Can you stop mutinying? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's baffling, everything that went on with that. And the fact that they didn't even bother to prosecute Prigozhin over it. So that's, they just let him go. It's like, it's no big deal. Now, it's interesting they picked up some of these other people, or at least this one general we talked about earlier. But yeah, this is really, how much of this is, really just Ganda and positioning and trying to make themselves look something that they may not be, intentionally to throw off the rest of the world. One other point I'd like to make, though, this is really funny because we just talked about this a minute ago with our current president.
They left it out.
Remember, they left the gaff out. They left it out in this article. Obviously, it wouldn't have done them any good in this article, but it's just funny. It's in that second paragraph. They totally botched the quote up, or chopped the quote up, so they didn't have to put his Iraq quote in there.
Yeah, so do you guys notice it says, I know he is, President JB told reporters at the White House in response to whether Putin is weaker after the most serious threat to his nearly quarter century in power. Quote, by the way, I always thought that if you change the quote that you have to say it's paraphrasing. Isn't that?
Well, they didn't change it. They left it out. So they decided to
they omitted it.
Part of it. They omitted it. Okay,
so do you guys see this is Yahoo, so it's probably from somewhere else because they aggregated it and it's a syndicated article. But they literally say he's losing the war at home. Okay, Bloomberg. Gosh, that's horrible. He's losing the war at home and he has become a bit of pariah around the world. They totally left out the fact that he said he's losing the war in Iraq and he's losing the war at home and he's become a bit of a pariah around the world. Is that just, that's kind of morally kind of crappy, isn't it? Or it's just bad writing. I don't know what you would call that. You would think that you would add in there, if you're going to use that quote, then say, oh, but it was a gaffe, but this is what he meant. That's horrible. I noticed it right away. All right, and then before we move on, make sure to go over, if you don't have long-term survival food, marfooglenews.com/prep. You can get freeze-dried food that will last 25 years. It's a great resource because this is one of the most affordable ways, with $200 off for a 3-month plan, to get yourself stocked up with freeze-dried food that will last literally decades, and you can just add water, cook, and you have yourself a meal. Go to marfooglenews.com/prep. Again, that's 1 month for 3 people, a month and a half for 2 people, or 3 months for 1. So if you do want to stock up and use very little space, This is also a good way to do that because freeze-dried food basically takes out all the water molecules. It's kind of like if you vacuum sealed a blanket. It's about 1/10 of the size. So you really do save a lot of space as well. If you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of space to store food, this is something that a lot of people say is a great way to do it for space as well. Marfooglenews.com/prep. This food will be good until 2052 or longer. So that's really cool. Marfooglenews.com/prep. With our link, you will get $200 off and you'll be supporting our show. We are on our own. We're independent. We don't have a multi-channel network. And again, we don't have a multi-billion-dollar company behind us. We have the Fugel fam. So thank you as always. And then Putin tells troops they stopped a civil war, confirms Russian pilots were forcefully perished by the Wagner Group. A civil conflict? It's more like they stopped a street party or something. It just, first of all, when you see even the footage of like how everybody, they're going up to Wagner like he's a war hero. They want his signature and all that. Is he popular because of his previous times, like taking over oil fields in Syria? I don't think so. Do you think kids have his poster up on the wall like Pregazin? Like is he on those like endurance posters like Pregazin, endure. If you really try, you'll get that oil field with like a cat hanging off a ladder or something. Hang in there. I don't know. But what I will say is I don't think too many people were worshiping or running up like he's a celebrity before this conflict. And if they are running up to him, doesn't that mean up until like a couple days ago, they would be doing that because they're supporting of this war? Did you think about that, Dex? How all these people are saying he's a hero? Is he a hero because he went against Putin and everybody hates Putin? Or were they running up to him because he's a war hero in this current conflict, which it looked like a whole lot of people were cheering on this conflict? Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, and the other thing to consider is if you look at Putin's actions towards him, by letting him go, by letting him leave the country, by not, holding him accountable for mutiny, is that a sign that he was literally scared of him? Like, in other words, if Putin said, are you out of your mind? Somebody's marching up our interstate to Moscow, and taking down numerous helicopters and hurt people, etc. We're going to allow that to happen, or are we going to take charge and put and extinguish that flame, so to speak? Well, you would think they would be like, we're going to extinguish that flame and put him in jail. If they're not willing to do that, then why? If it's just a stunt and a stage, and then fine, then we'll just write this off as Ganda. Or was he really so scared that he thought, if I wanted to roll in there and take Prigozhin out, what would it take? Would it then require a massive amount of troops to do that? Would it turn into an actual civil conflict? So that's the struggle we all have with this narrative. Like, what's the truth and what's not? The other thing that's interesting, though, is in this, he did call him out and say, look, we spent billions on Prigozhin in the Wagner group, and it's come out of the, obviously Russia's budget. They paid him. And he said, we fully financed the group from the federal budget. So and part of what he was trying to say was whether or not there was misuse in that money. In other words, could they go after him for something else, and as opposed to treason? I don't know why, if they want to go after him at all, they should have just went after him. But now he's in another country. Presumably they could still get to him, I guess. But I don't know. This thing is totally confusing.
Well, and so they say, and when the Wagner thing went down, I pointed this out yesterday and the day before, and right after it happened, the company that owns this platform and many others, the YouTube, that company, the Alphabet, and of course many other telecommunications were blocked. So in Russia, as the Wagner thing was going down, they shut down all these communications. They have an intranet if they want it. They can shut down their whole internet. If they cyber attack the world, they can turn the entire Russian internet into an intranet. I think that a lot of people have nobody's talked about this that I've seen. They turned off all of these things. So say you're a Russian civilian, you're on your phone, you're watching the news, but you don't get any of the Western narrative. All of a sudden, the worldwide stuff is not coming in. What was the narrative? I would love to see, 10 hours straight of Russian TV, what it was showing there while this stuff was going on. Were they showing Wagner's coming towards Moscow? Or did they just see people setting up weapons and then Wagner walks through like it's a military parade? Everybody goes up to the car. Oh, can I get your autograph? First of all, why do they support Wagner? Oh, well, because Wagner and his soldiers are war heroes, right? They're fighting for Mother Russia. So doesn't that mean that they also support them in Ukraine and that they're supporting them as war heroes? Wouldn't that also mean that they support the war in the first place? They're not booing at them like, boo, get out of UKR, you suck. Maybe there was one video that supposedly said that. We don't know because it's in Russian. But doesn't that mean they support him? So if he then goes against that, you would think that they would be like, traitor. Well, even in Putin's speech, according to the Western narrative, it says that he says, well, you guys are war heroes. You guys are still war heroes. Even though you did this, it's messed up because what are they going to remember you as? The person who did this rebellion against Mother Russia or the war hero that you still are? Did you catch that part of the speech? He basically said that they're still, remember, just last week they were going to war for Russia and that you guys are war heroes. I think that there was I think that there was a disconnect. And that's why I think that this is all some sort of ganda and Russia has a hand in it, because I think they blocked all of that so the locals would not see all of that, or the majority of them wouldn't. Maybe that's even why the video had one guy going, boo, you're a traitor, shame. But most of them had people running out to go greet them and to say thank you and can I have your autograph? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. A civil conflict? Who versus who? Most people are in support of this conflict in UKR. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. And then Lukashenko confirms Wagner leader's arrival in Belarus, urged Putin not to take him out. Lukashenko is literally under Vlad's armpit. Okay, Lukashenko is his, sorry. So it seems like this is all one big play, in my opinion. Lukashenko confirmed Tuesday that the Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin has arrived in Belarus 3 days following an armed uprising he led against Russia's defense ministry, which has grabbed worldwide headlines. It says, quote, yes, today he's in Belarus. Lukashenko was cited in state-run Belta news agency as saying, we'll help you if you want to stay with us for a while at Wagner's expense, of course. The Belarusian leader said. Ironically, the words came out the same day President Vlad revealed in a speech that the Russian government paid Wagner Group about $1 billion in contracts over the past year of conflict in UKR. Think about that, $1 billion for the, pretty small number of troops compared to the whole conflict. That's a lot of money. The upkeep of the entire Wagner Group was fully provided for by the state, Putin had said. Well, he was also thanking soldiers and security services for their part in stopping a civil conflict. The Minsk government has also batted down rumors that Wagner could play a role in guarding the Russian tactical nukes now stationed on Belarusian territory. So this guy that was just about to mutiny and do a coup on Putin's basically, right hand is now going to put him in charge of watching the nukes? It doesn't sit right. Nothing sits right. It just doesn't sit right. Thank you, Yep. Thank you over on D Live. Thank you guys. Thank you, Beer Juice. Oh, the insanity. That's right. Scooby-Doo right. Thank you. Thank you again for the support over there. And then Kimbria. Thank you, MeMan1984, for hosting over on D-Live. Chance Paladin. And, of course, USMC Mom. Thank you for following. Thank you, Chance, for hosting, and thank you for modding. And let's see here. Witteg, and Better Not Go Live boy just followed. Hey, thank you. Bug Nana, Renegade Petey, and Beer Juice. Thank you. And Kelly2334. Thank you, and thank you. I don't know. Just doesn't sit right. And then Dex, do you want to talk about how Lukashenko then ordered the government to develop an algorithm for use of Russian nuclear weapons?
Yes. And real quick, I want to jump back to the article before. There was two quotes I thought that were interesting. One, in addition to him saying that they weren't using them to guard the nuclear weapons, he also said, but I could use such a unit in my army. In other words, he's now exploring using Prigozhin as a instructor or trainer or something else in his own military. So that'll be interesting to see if what comes from that. And then the other quote was what he had literally said to Putin was, quote unquote, I said to Putin, we could waste Prigozhin, no problem. If not on the first try, then on the second, I told him, but don't do this. So he was basically saying, don't take him out, which is rather fascinating that that's the kind of conversation they were having. As far as this algorithm, this is interesting because as most people understand that Russia put their nukes in Belarus, just like the U.S. or the West with NATO has put, certain nukes in certain locations, and there's certain ways they have to be able to use them. What he is suggesting now is that he wants an algorithm. I think that's probably a more along the lines of a procedure or chain of events for how he would be able to use these, not necessarily just that Russia would be able to use them, which most people have thought, it's a protocol. Most people have thought that these were under Russia control, but he is trying to suggest that what we should do is create this algorithm, as he's calling it, a protocol that says under these circumstances we can use these and we'll use them. So if someone attacks us, crosses our border, does etc. And so that's kind of a scary thought that he's going, it's one thing to be positioned in his country so it's closer to the West. You would think, okay, closer to the West but still under the control of Putin, but now it's in his country, and oh, by the way, he wants to have his finger on the trigger, so to speak, so that he can decide based on their own algorithm when they can push the button.
And a lot of people got stuck yesterday on like the algorithm part of it. It's basically, for any reason, they're going to list the reasons why they would use nukes. This is after a couple months ago saying that the only way that we would get involved with Russia and fight, possibly even in UKR, is that if we were attacked. So this is where it was set up early in our brains that this is, this could possibly be a Fantastic Freddy. Only, of course, they're not going to call it a Fantastic Freddy. They'll say, oh, this person or this person struck us. Now they have supposedly tactical nukes in Belarus. Now they have a good chunk of the Wagner group. What are they doing? What is actually happening here? They've dug trenches all over the place. I've already listed the many countries right now in NATO that are essentially preparing for World War III. And everybody wants to say that, that's fear-mongering. I think fear is a good catalyst to get people to actually prepare for some of this stuff. I mean, honestly, if fear can be quite a useful thing, especially nowadays, everybody here in the U.S. is far too they're far too comfortable. We take everything for granted here. We really do. From the fact that most of us can eat tonight to the fact that we all think that we are invincible somehow. I don't think we are, and especially not invincible from within. That's for dang sure. But as far as the Belarus thing, we'll keep following it. We'll see where it goes. And then UK says that the Storm Shadow missiles it gave Ukraine have been wreaking havoc on Russian targets and are accurate almost without fault. So they throw these things out there. We've covered since they first gave the Storm Shadows, which are these things. Very, very accurate missiles. Storm Shadow missiles provided Ukraine by the UK are striking their targets with nearly pinpoint accuracy, sending Russian operations into disarray. This furthers the widely widely pushed narrative that Russia is failing horribly, that they're losing this conflict. There are many experts that say that they are not. Again, they're not using all of their abilities. Its accuracy and ability to deliver successfully the payload as sent and designed by the Ukrainians has almost been without fault, he added. According to the manufacturer MBDA, the air-launched missile has a range exceeding 155 miles and is designed to fly low after launch to evade detection. What is crazy about these things is that they can basically fly right over your head, look like a plane almost, and then hit their target however far away, 600 miles away or something. No, I'm sorry. This doesn't go as far. The missile's range means it can strike dramatically beyond the reach of the much celebrated HIMARS launchers sent to the U.S. by Ukraine, which were modified to keep their range within about 50 miles, the Wall Street Journal reported. The Storm Shadow's effect on the Russian army in Ukraine has been primarily around its logistics as well as command and control. Wallace said after being pummeled last year by HIMARS, Russian forces adapted by moving their command and control nodes out of range. It said, "This is why deep fires became important," he said, urging Ukraine's allies to provide further long-range equipment. The UK announced in May that it would send an undisclosed number of the Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. By the end of that month, Ukraine said it was using the missile with 100% strike success, a figure challenged by Russia, which said it had intercepted 2 of them, basically making it 99% or 98% or whatever percent, because who knows, they could have used 4. Either way, you have to see this. UK is providing a missile, and if this is true and there's a 100% success rate, then UK providing these missiles to Ukraine directly supported them having a 100% ratio on this attacking Russia. So by proxy, they were providing them the means to take Russian lives. So Russia's probably not too happy about that if this is true. And we're going to get to some wild stuff just quickly. Protect yourself against EMP. Go to marfugglenews.com/EMP. You can put this in your car, your truck, or any other device you want to keep running, including your homes and generators, even your Inergy solar generator, to protect it against an EMP strike or a CME, a solar event. We'll talk about solar events here in a minute because there is a lot of chatter about solar events right now coming into 2025. So we'll talk about that later. But again, marfugglenews.com/EMP. Because now we are going into gay furries hacking spree against anti-Trump movement expands to 5 states. Yeah. Yeah. I love how whoever wrote this used the stock footage of a dog. A dog on a laptop. Oh, when they wrote this was intended. They were like, "Oh, what could I get for stock photos? A dog on a computer." And this is what they used. By the way, if you don't know what furries are, they're people that dress up as furry companions, all sorts of different things. Some say that there's a kind of a perversion there. Some say it's just a hobby where they make, fancy costumes. But apparently they are attacking all of the movements that are going against the anti-trans community. Dex, how are they doing this? They're essentially hacking in and trying to destroy their enemies.
Well, in some cases, they've defaced websites. They've left special messages. They've, done different types of things. I know Texas was one of the ones they went after first. They were, I think, Nebraska's court was one. The website for South Dakota Board of Commissions. Personal information was taken from the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council, Pennsylvania's provider of self-service website, and others. So, in South Carolina, I believe, was the other one. So, But they're doing a range of hacking, but they're taking credit for this, and they're doing it in under a cause that they're saying, which is obviously we've already addressed what their cause is. But we talk about cyber events. This is a different, interesting perspective on a cyber event coming from inside our country, from a group or an somewhat organized group of people who claim they are organized. They're going after specific government entities because of the rules and laws that they're putting in place that they feel are harming their position.
And mind you, the DHS billboard and the bulletin that went out essentially said that it was conservatives that were the biggest threat. But apparently that there might be some competition there. So this is definitely not in that category. It's quite the opposite. And as you can see, there was be gay, do crime. That's the motto there. More damage must be done. Again, they actually quoted, they said, our next attack on the U.S. Gov has arrived. And it goes after Nebraska Supreme Court, South Dakota, Texas State, Pennsylvania Provider Self-Service, and South Carolina Criminal Justice Information Services. So they're hitting some big things. One thing I would point out is that we have talked about all of the crazy cyber events that can happen. There's more groups than this. There's a lot of groups forming nowadays. I don't really care who does it. As a prepper, we more care about like if this happens, if something really, really big happens. Now, if they can do this to state governments and things like this, imagine what a nation-state actor or a major power, what their groups can do. China, for one, has 1 million on their payroll as part of their kind of cyber army, right? Russia has the ability to do massive cyber attacks. A lot of these countries do. Even the smaller countries involved have crazy cyber events going on all the time. And what's crazy is that most people don't actually know. There's always a cover for these things. We've covered tons of different cyber events over the past, but they always say they'll pay the ransom. Big companies, airlines, whatever else, they'll have a huge event, and then they'll say, "Oh, it was a glitch, or it was a technical difficulty, or it was this or that." We've seen a ton of events where whole airports are down, or there's flights canceled all over the place, there's pipelines that stop, there's this and that, and then they always say, oh, it was because of this or that. One thing people have to realize is there's attacks going on all the time. There's attacks going on. We have seen many huge hacks. The Microsoft hack just last week, there was huge attacks. Multiple states had full Xfinity outages, and they said, oh, it was a homeless guy cutting down cords and things. There's things going on all the time, and most of which they do not tell the public. So this is why preppers prep. They prep for the unlikely, for the unprobable. But right now, in this day and age, we are so dependent on electricity. We are so dependent on, of course, our internet, and our infrastructure is so dependent on our internet. So it is a good thing to be prepped. Thank you again, Jerry Schertz, Emily Hillard, Stephen McMahon, Desert Nurse, Peter Krakowski, Shannon B., Blue Boy 1968, Bill Fortenberry, James Wright, Bible Talk 777, Uncommon News, Nana of Montana, Tennessee Mountain Girl, Trinity, Red or Blue Pill, Hi-Ho, Kermit the Frog here, Lewis Dennings, Ray the Way, and wherever you are, thank you, Kenny Cams, Caitlin Sweat, James Parks, and of course, Rip Curl Readiness. First human trials begin for AI-designed drug. We actually talked about this when it was being put through. Now they say, forget college essays. Artificial intelligence has much bigger fish to fry. Biotech firm In Silico Medicine said Monday that it entered an AI-discovered and designed drug into phase 2 clinical trials involving human subjects, a first for the industry, the robots, they may not be so bad after all. AI optimists have long pointed out to advances in drug development as a reason for bullishness, and it's easy to understand why. The sheer data crunching and protein identifying prowess of such systems could potentially cut development time in half and development prices by even more. Proponents often claim, at least. It says in plain English, AI can complete complex math problems far faster than human scientists ever could. Thus, AI and ML tools could help develop 50 new drugs worth potentially $50 billion over the next decade, according to a Morgan Stanley report. Now in Silico Medicine has started a startup backed by major private equity firm Warburg Pincus, and Chinese conglomerate Fosun Group is turning that optimism into reality by using machine learning tools to develop INSO18055, a novel treatment for chronic lung disease, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So this is something where AI is being used for good, right? Well, I think it's interesting that one of the more than half backer of this is the Chinese conglomerate Fosun. Obviously, the thing is everybody's arguing that AI should take a pause because it's going way too fast. Well, the thing is, even if everybody pauses, China has made it clear they're not going to, because they're actually ahead of us in AI and in autonomous technology already. And even our own Pentagon, the chief software officer that had a job created for him at the Pentagon, left. And as he left, he said that essentially he didn't want blood on his hand, and that he said that China was ahead of us in all of these categories. And that was before the actual proof of them being ahead in 37 out of 44 categories. He said that once you get ahead in something like this, there's almost no catching up. So we're already dependent on APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, and we are already dependent on China for antibiotics and the APIs that go into making them. So this I think is good because they're coming up with medicines, but watch. Who's going to own and manufacture these medicines? And who is going to be doing it faster? Who is going to control the world is more my concern. And how fast this AI is going to be utilized and useful is also how fast that they are going to say it is necessary. People truly do not understand how much AI is going to change this world. If what they are saying is true about how advanced this thing has really gotten, then we're going to be living in a different world in just a couple years. Dex, from the technical standpoint of this, what did you think when you saw this?
Well, I mean, when we first covered this, I mean, this is a great use case of, taking something that's very time consuming and complex and allowing computers to solve it, right? I mean, just like the spreadsheet solved a lot of problems, when that came around. So this is great. I agree with you wholeheartedly about who owns it. Now, the one question I would put out there is if this type of technology being used to create or solve the problems that they have when they go around creating medications and drugs and things like that, if they can do it cheaper and faster, are they really going to pass that cheaper and faster on to us? Or are they going to continue with this ridiculously high prices that they always have for new drugs for the first so many years until they lose their generic protections and then generics come out and bring the prices down? That's, it would also be beneficial if we saw that passed on to us. I have a sneaking suspicion that the pharmaceuticals are just going to say, whoopee, we got more profits now, not look at how much we can save the end user.
I just want to point out one of the scariest things on this piece, and is a quote right here. It says, quote, "Every major pharma company has invested in partnerships with at least one, if not multiple, AI companies." Really absorb that. Every pharma company, every major one, is now investing in AI technologies. If you are somebody who is slightly fearful of what AI can do. Just imagine, if you know about how powerful pharma companies are now, imagine when they have AI under their belt. Imagine the studies that they put out, they do. Imagine the power they wield in media. Imagine then when they have the power to make things that are essentially life necessary, that they make cures, they make these things, blah, blah, blah. Imagine when they get a pill that can cure things that we've never imagined, and the power they will wield over people when they own that cure. Imagine when they end up using this thing to process Vs that can do certain things. Vs that can make you instantly strong, or Vs that can make you, unsusceptible to this or that. Things that we don't even think are possible now. With AI, they are. And guess who's going to own the patents to those things? Guess who's not going to be liable for those same things when they go wrong? That's a major thing to me, and I don't think people really realize what's happening until it's too late. Yeah. What do you guys think? Let me know. Bunny Kisses. Hey, thank you for the $20 super chat. Thank you for supporting Independent. Eric Ibu Elliott says you rock, Adam. Hey, thanks. Appreciate that, Eric. And then Rumbly the Clown says hello from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Fugle family, thank you. Keep up the amazing work. Well, thank you, Rumbly the Clown. Rumbly the Clown. I always read it like Rumble because we're on Rumble. Thank you, by the way, for the. Looks like I thought it showed us 400 over on Rumble. Thank you guys, and I appreciate you. Murphy's Law and Drop if you're over there. I believe that's your new home now. Thank you. And so this is there's a point to be made here. So yesterday we actually covered a piece that's been put out all over the place, and now there are tons and tons of stories talking about possible pole shift, about the sun and the events that it could, yield. The sun is about to get more active than it has for a decade, and it could lead to power outages, grounded flights, and stunning auroras. It said that the sun may be waking up after almost a decade of relative calm, scientists say, and that could cause problems here on Earth. The solar storms that rage on our star during its active period create bursts of electromagnetic energy that can affect everything from power grids to GPS signals. These so-called solar maximums occur roughly every 11 years, and they haven't been much of a problem in the past. Scientists, however, fear that our reliance on electricity and interconnectivity could mean that we're far more vulnerable to their effects this time around. The sun's poles are flipping, it says. The sun is a big ball of plasma heated at its center. The plasma, which is made of charged particles, boils towards the surface, cools down, and sinks back towards the core again. That motion, called convection, is what creates strong magnetic fields at the poles and smaller local magnetic fields at the surface of the sun. It says every 11 years or so, the sun becomes connectively unstable, meaning that its magnetic fields become so unstable that the magnetic north and south poles abruptly flip, throwing our star's polarity out of whack, said Matthew Owens, professor of space physics at the University of Reading. It said that instability causes havoc in the magnetic fields at the surface of the sun, which become more and more active. That's when the solar maximum happens. Solar storms, of course, it talks about some of the different things, but again, I wanted to get down to the main point here. There may be power outages as the geomagnetic storm messes with the ionosphere's magnetic charge. It creates currents in the ionosphere. Those currents in our upper atmosphere interact with the particles in the ground. The interaction between these particles creates strong electrical currents that can flood infrastructure on Earth. This can trigger some bizarre phenomena. In one example, in 1972, U.S. military pilots flying south of Haiphong Harbor in North Vietnam saw 24 sea mines explode in the water without any apparent cause. A 2018 study looking at space weather at the time concluded that the cause was a huge solar storm. If the currents flood the electrical grid, they can blow up transformers. One damaged transformer won't cause much of an issue, but a huge geomagnetic storm heading towards Earth, a storm so big it would probably give us aurora down to the equators, could cause several transformers to go at once or overwhelm the other transformers that could have been then blow up, knocking down the whole grid. Now, this is the big scenario that folks have talked about for years. Now, we actually have Wages World that follows the solar activity really closely, and we actually give you updates when really serious stuff happens. But this is a point to be made. All of the stuff that's going on down here on Earth, whether it be war in Ukraine, whether it be China and Taiwan, all of that could fall by the wayside if we have a serious solar event. And everyone that has followed this has looked at how they have actually been tracking this, and they say that they have tracking all the way back 400 years about these 11-year cycles. Well, there's actually been a couple of guys, a couple of experts on this that have actually pulled a lot more people into their field now. A lot more people are actually, a lot more scientists are actually agreeing with them as time goes on, and their theories that it's actually the 11-year cycles. There's also a 22-year cycle that looks at that multiple cycles put into one, or that they look at it every 22 years. Well, they've also looked at a cycle of cycles. So they have looked at kind of the events that happen before the end of the cycle and how it starts and how it ends and how it starts. And they've noticed a cycle within all of the cycles. So if you have 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, they've noticed that, say, every 4 or every 8 or every 16 cycles inside this other cycle, that there's huge events, that there's these huge, crazy, weird instabilities. They say that solar cycle 25, which we are in right now, because of the termination event that happened before, they say it looks exactly like what they have seen before. And what they saw before was this basically extremely unstable, unpredictable solar cycle. We are in that right now, and we have covered, there's been tons of this all over the place now, how they believe that the solar maximum of this cycle is not only going to possibly be this 1 in every 8, 1 in every 16 cycles, but it's also moving faster than they thought it was. It's moving up and up and up. So we thought we had until 2024, 2025. Now some say that this might even happen right around the corner. Dex, I think it's a trip that this has been put out all over the place, and we're just seeing more and more coverage of it. Are they just trying to scare us, or is there something here?
Well, no, there's definitely something here. I mean, based on everybody watching and paying attention to how the sun reacts over time, we've got plenty of evidence to show that. What's interesting, the other things that a lot of people, we don't talk about, it's always power. We talk about power. That's the obvious one. Obviously, it is the most has the most effect on us if we were to lose power. But the whole notion of grounding planes. I mean, think about this. We've talked about. I know when we've had Wages on, we've had a storm of X size or whatever size. He'll rate it or tell us what they're rating it as, and they'll say there's some radio blackouts. Well, that's usually shortwave that's happening to, but it does affect the ability for radio waves to transmit. But what they're talking about here with this larger amount, if they're getting radio blackouts and they're having satellite communication disruption, which is what would also happen in a larger solar storm, then you're not going to have flights. All flights will be grounded. They cannot fly if there's no radio and no satellite. They have to have one or the other, preferably both. So they'll ground flights when this happens. That's kind of an interesting thing to think about. And then the other one that's not talked about that often is what happens to astronauts in space. The radiation coming off of this can be much greater. We don't really feel it here because it gets deflected off of our planet because we have our own magnetic poles that will help deflect a lot of that off, and that's why we see those auroras. I mean, some of it gets through, but nowhere near the amount of raw radiation that's up there. But to anybody doing space travel or in space, this then becomes yet another potential hazard for those that are there, because they're going to have get a direct impact from these larger types of bursts that are coming from the sun.
I guess that will affect the Elon and the rich elites that are going to Mars, right? As far as solar events, when you look at the Deagle and you look at all these things that are lining up with 2024, 2025, it's like, is all of this just chatter? And is it going to pass like 2012 did? Which, oddly enough, in 2012 or 2013 or something, there actually was a huge geostorm that barely missed us, and they said that would have actually been one that could have knocked this out. It's a matter of time before this does happen. It's literally going to happen at some point, and there is a way to protect it. There is a way to actually stop it, but will our governments of the world actually update all of our grids before that happens? If they knock that down, we're talking about anywhere from 6 months to 2 years without power. And this is something that the governments have worried about. And I wonder, why out of nowhere did we all of a sudden create a space force? Why out of nowhere is everybody and all of the richest people in the world trying to get to space? Why did Richard Branson start Virgin Space or whatever it's called? Why did Bezos start Blue Origin? Why did Elon start SpaceX? Why do all the rich people want to go to space? Or are they knowing of something that we don't? That's my question. Why is Elon's other company, Elon, who has openly said he believes that there is an end of the world, and he is an end of the worlder if you've ever listened to him. He believes you should have 6 children and that humanity's only chance of survival is that if everybody starts having babies. Everybody goes, well, what do you mean? We're overpopulated. He says that there's a birth decline. I think he knows something we don't too, like what is going in our food, what's happening that male sperm counts have gone down to 50% in the last few decades. What is happening? Why all of a sudden is the birth issue even an issue now, which is not visible when we have 8 billion people on the planet, right? But in a couple generations, it will be very visible. When you have more old people in diapers than babies in diapers, that's a problem. And that's already happened. It's happened 15 years ago, or for the last 15 years in Japan and many other places. So it makes you wonder, why are they coming up with all these ways to knock out asteroids out of the sky? Why are they sending seeds to the moon? Why is all of his companies have something to do with either electric grid, electrical batteries to back up the grid, digging holes deep into the ground? I mean, look at his companies. The Boring Company digs tunnels under the earth, and I guarantee you he's digging some of those holes for governments for some sort of base. His other company goes to space. His other company has a chip that connects to the brain. What would you need for long-term space flight? You would need to be able to essentially go to sleep or have something that puts you out for a while. It's just weird. And then Tesla makes the lithium batteries and all the battery technology that they have, which now the grids around the country, they have seen folks with Tesla hats around them and bringing in things that look like giant backup batteries. Are those backup batteries for if things get knocked out, then those batteries would take over? I don't know. But it just seems weird to me that all of his companies have something to do with a possible scenario, or at least that's how I see it. How do you guys see it? Let me know in the comments down below. Speaking of which, let's see here. There won't be any kids from all of the homoequality going on. Warren G, I mean, that sounds insensitive, but why is this happening? Why 1 out of 4 teenagers saying that they're that way? It seems like it's a lot more than just like, oh, it's acceptance, so everybody's coming out. It seems more like it's a cultural thing that it's more and more popular. Let's see here. Yeah, the magnetic poles might really be shifting, Doc Papadopoulos. Well, and if our poles shift, even a smaller solar storm could affect us more if we have some sort of pole phenomenon happen. It's a fad, saying Jenny. Well, it's crazy to think of that like that too, right? Marie Griffin does a Super sticker of a face vomiting. I think a lot of people. CME can make us sick also. Wages World, yeah. So I didn't know that until recently, because many people say the CME won't physically affect us. We are made out of electricity. So I guess some have said that when they've done tested in military aspects, that it actually it could make us sick. Let's see here. Marf, it's Erie, not Earth. And then it's Earth, not Earth. And then Atrazine says Swavel House. Yeah, in the water. I totally agree with Adam. Shastina. Hey, it's nice to see you, Shastina. Speaking of which, Truth Iris. Hey, nice to see you. Let's see here. Ian DeBow. It's brainwashed, lack of testosterone, plus a war against family. It's coordinated. Well, it's definitely they think about think about Christianity. Even if you're not one, it's always kind of held the biggest spot, right? The whole emphasis was on family. Man meets woman, man gets married, man has kids. That's no longer the popular belief. Neither is God in general. In fact, I think atheism is growing stronger than ever. Maybe Musk isn't who he seems. Says it's Vlad Dilad. Well, there's a lot of people that believe that. Able Bodied sent me some information, actually a broad amount of information that would make people think twice. Sad, says Doc. Nuclear family has been destroyed. Let's see here. Quinnock Steenholt. Gotta go to bed. Good night. Hey, have a good night. Ian DeBow. Keith Simmons says, this atrazine is delicious. Where's my teeth? Let's see here. Knights in white satin. Vladiat sus. Real sus. Musk is a deep state agent who's into transhumanism. Well, the whole turning into robots thing is a scary thing too. And then Sully's World. Hey, thank you. Appreciate that. I filter, no fluoride for me. Well, it's bigger than that. There's some question. There's a lot more in it, but you can do your own research on that again. But as far as solar events, the whole world isn't going to fix their stuff. So I go back to this. We already covered it, but you should go check these out. This is a real suggestion from us. Make sure to go check out EMP shields, because you'll be able to keep your car running, your trucks running, and you'll be able to keep your house running. If an EMP shield is wired into your car, it's really simple. Red on red, black on black, green to ground. But the house version, that one I would highly recommend, because it will protect everything plugged in within 250 feet. Go to marfugglenews.com/EMP. We are suggesting this. They are an affiliate, so it helps us. But at the same time, we think people should be looking at this. It is a part of a... If all of us did this, I don't think we would be in nearly as much trouble as we would right now. The governments of the world are not really trying to protect us. They're protecting themselves. You can clearly see that. They're protecting all of their stuff, but they're not protecting us. So they don't care if we can get from point A to point B. Heck, they don't want us traveling at all. All right, and then thank you again, Be Real Beast. Thank you, Marie Griffin. Thank you, Bunny Kisses. Eric Ibu Elliott. Thank you, Rumbly the Clown. And thank you, Robert Hoskins. Appreciate you. Thank your mods again by dropping an M in the chat. Dex, let's go over the web only. Actually, no, we do have one more thing, and I'm going to pop this up. You go over web only, and then we'll go over the last thing of the night here.
Okay, and a time check, we got about 5.
Okay.
So head over to marfugglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or click on the show notes link down below in the description. It'll take you to the webpage where all of the news is covered that we just went over. All of the links and sources are there. Orange bar called Overflow. That's where you'll find the rest of the story. Lots going on there. I'll give you a brief, quick version of what's there. If you recall, the airport worker who got ingested into a plane engine just recently, they're now ruling that an intentional act on their part. In other words, they wanted to do that. There's some updates on the EpiPen stuff coming out from the jail guards or the Justice Department, basically just reiterating that there was negligence on the jail guards and misconduct on their part. So nothing really revealing there, but if you want to know what they came out with, it's there. Of course, the Musk stuff is here, both his mommy and his daddy. They're covered as well. Get this: the beach down in Florida, Panama City Beach, is now had 11 people perish from rip currents. Even though they're told don't go in the water, it's bad, they keep doing it, including a former NFL football quarterback. It's now the most deadliest beach in America at the moment because of this. So rather interesting, weird thing that's just happening at that location. That's a lot of people. That's more people than were on the sub. That's just about as many people as perished in the city of Chicago the weekend that the sub went down. So if you think about all the things that we tend to give attention to or not. We do have updates on the UKR stuff. Interesting story about Prigozhin there as well, about his background and what all he owns. So if you want to see that, that's there. Definitely have a little bit of update on the political stuff. So all of it's on the website, marfooglenews.com. Click on the thumbnail for the show or open up that show notes link down below in the description.
And I was trying to figure out what the deal with this scene is. And you know what's so crazy is two of the sources for it have disappeared. And I don't know if that is the church trying to wipe it, but there is, and from what I believe it's a scene from the Pope's Exorcist. And I was actually going to call out to you guys, what the heck and where the heck is the source for this? So you might be seeing an uptick all over Twitter. People have been showing the Pope with pictures of him and essentially, demonic entities, right? Well, there is especially things like this, right? This is AI generated. Well, there's a what looks to be a real picture showing the Pope shaking hands with a visible demon, like a demon. And what's crazy is some of these are like disappearing. So I'm going to have to go to my home here. And I'm hoping I can find this. What's so crazy is two of the main sources that it was gone. So this is actually one that was edited. But there's these pictures. Let's see. I'm trying to find the real picture of him shaking the hand of the demon. And if you know what I'm talking about, it most definitely looks real. And some are saying that it's at the shot where they shot Pope's Exorcist, and they're saying that it is a real thing. Whether it's a movie or they're shooting for a movie, do you think it's right that he ends up shaking hands with a demon? So in the right one, the handshake right here, this is a demon. And the real picture is somebody who is in this full outfit of a demon. I don't know why. Maybe, hold on. Let me try one more thing before we switch over to Jams. And remember, you can actually follow us over on Jams as well. And you'll find, maybe I tried DuckDuckGo. Oh. I mean, why can't you find it? That's exact depiction of this picture. Why is this picture? It's like the search engines now have wiped it. Here we go. Look at this picture. Okay. Look at this. So can you guys tell me, what was this for? Was this for the movie The Pope's Exorcist? Please let me know. Here's the picture that is in question. Even if this was for a movie, why would the Pope even do that? Symbolically, they hold that so high, they wouldn't even mess with that. Why would he do this? Even if it represents something else. You can't see at the top of this picture, but he has two visible horns, like the symbolism of horns. Why? I would love to hear your opinions on this. Please let me know. And make sure to follow us over on Jams. We'll be doing the shoutro over there. Be Real Beast. Most definitely getting again, thank you. It's now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout-out. It's a shoutro.
Whether you Caucasian or you Jamaican, this I know now. World is what you make it, that's why I'm thanking everyone around. Whether you Caucasian or you Jamaican, this I know now. I say, hey, wait, the same Malachi. It is chaotic and the Catholic I be. It all started when I was born. I see. Life imitating art, says Patrick Bellamar. I say it's gonna go so far with a Rachel.